Rick Anderson, tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, a new effort to stop the cycle of food waste at supermarkets.
If you view the food scraps as a waste, you've missed the point. Food scraps are a resource.
The real-time data that may help grocers avoid food waste, plus the technology that transforms food scraps into an unexpected resource.
Anti-Muslim discrimination doubled in a year in California, what a new civil rights report says about Muslim bias in the San Diego region. I'm Peggy Pico with the details just ahead. And transgender in the military, why Don't Ask, Don't Tell lives on for some service members.
Taking the plunge, the summer ritual you can only find in San Diego. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Dwayne Brown is off. A new state review of the Denti-Cal program reveals there's been a big decline in the number of participating dentists since 2009. And at the same time, there's been a major increase in patients. From our North County Bureau, KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg has details.
The review shows between 2009 and 2014, the number of children enrolled in the Denti-Cal program increased by nearly 40%. But the number of dentists who treated Denti-Cal patients decreased by almost 14%. The review reveals on average, Denti-Cal pays less than a third of what commercial insurance pays. It also pays less than equivalent public programs in New York, Texas, and Florida. State lawmakers recently reversed a 10% Denti-Cal pay cut that took effect in 2013. But the California Dental Association says if the state wants to get more dentists in the program, it needs to increase Denti-Cal rates. Kenny Goldberg, KPBS News.
State officials say their decision to strip Blue Shield of California of its tax-exempt status is justified by a new audit. The LA Times found the California Franchise Tax Board report outlines the nonprofit health insurer's stockpiling of $4 billion in surpluses. Auditors found Blue Shield's operations are indistinguishable from its for-profit healthcare competitors. The tax board says the insurance giant doesn't advance social welfare, and that's a key test for preserving its tax exemption. A turf war is heating up between UC San Diego and USC. UC San Diego is accusing the private college of an illegal conspiracy to grab research data and other assets. This after scientist Paul Eisen left UCSD to lead a new San Diego Alzheimer's Institute founded by USC. UC Regents filed a lawsuit for the campus claiming that Eisen worked with USC to take federal funding, data, and employees to that new institute. USC has denied wrongdoing. A steamroller hit the road today as San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer marked the launch of his plan to pave 1,000 miles of streets over the next 5 years. But San Diego needs more than just its streets fixed. The city is suffering from a backlog of infrastructure repairs estimated at $1.7 billion. And just last week, a city council committee discussed asking voters to raise the sales tax to pay for it. Faulconer wouldn't directly say whether he supports the tax idea.
As I've said very strongly, it's not about sending a bunch of money to City Hall unless City Hall can demonstrate that it can actually spend that money wisely.
He says his focus this year is to streamline the city's repair process. For many science fiction fans, Comic-Con is even better than Halloween. Convention attendees dress up as characters. It's called cosplay. But KPBS reporter Claire Tregeser says the attention-getting outfits sometimes lead to unwanted attention.
Accurate comic book costumes can leave women scantily clad because that's how female characters are drawn. But that's no excuse for bad behavior, says Rochelle Cahan, leader of advocacy group Geeks for Consent. She says sexual harassment is rampant at Comic-Con, and she feels the convention does little to fight it.
They need to create a more thorough policy that has details in it, as well as discuss what enforcement mechanisms will be in place.
Geeks for Consent collected 3,000 signatures asking the convention to beef up its anti-harassment policy and enforcement. It also published an audit detailing ways the convention could improve its harassment response. Kehan has several suggestions to increase enforcement, including a smartphone app to report harassment in real time. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
Discrimination against Muslims in California nearly doubled in a year, according to a new civil rights report. Peggy Pico has a look at Muslim bias here in San Diego.
The Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR, is a national civil rights and advocacy organization. The California chapter's recent civil rights report found discrimination against Muslims rose in areas from employment to school bullying and more. Joining me with the details are Hanif Mohebi, Executive Director of CAIR San Diego, and Deputy District Attorney Oscar Garcia with the county's Hate Crimes Unit. And Hanif, CAIR's report found more than 1,100 civil rights complaints filed in California during the 2013-2014 year. They involved biases against Muslims. What were some of the top offenses?
We had immigration discrimination, essentially. In some cases, for example, you had citizenship delays. You have hate incidents and Islamophobia reports, followed by FBI and law enforcement harassments.
And employment was also included in there as well, correct?
Yes.
And what would that involve? Employment, people not getting jobs or being discriminated while they were on the workforce?
Everything from the process of getting hired and then wrongful termination and harassment while they're at work.
Well, this report also revealed a lot of complaints about the, as you mentioned, Custom and Borders Protection. What were some specific complaints there, and why is that of particular concern?
Some of the line of questionings that are totally inappropriate. A person would be asked, which mosque did you go to? How many times do you pray? Would be asked about previous travels, which are all against, essentially, rights and liberties, and even CBP's and TSA's regulations.
And these are American citizens.
Absolutely.
Of Muslim descent. And Oscar, how is law enforcement in San Diego County trained to deal with hate crimes and civil rights issues?
Well, fortunately here in San Diego, every police cadet, before they sign on to a police department, has to go through a 4-hour intensive course specifically on hate crimes. So I teach it along with a representative from the Sheriff's Department and a representative from the Anti-Defamation League. So they go through a 4-hour course of, number one, how to recognize a hate crime, how to better investigate these types of crimes, and also to help get an understanding of the type of offenders as well as what happens to these particular type of victims, why they're more victimized.
What is the actual definition of a hate crime?
The essential definition of a hate crime is when one targets someone and is substantially motivated by prejudice or bias, substantial motivation of prejudice or bias towards a characteristic. That characteristic can be based upon ethnicity, nationality, sexual orientation, disability, religion. Those are the main characteristics.
I see. And Hanif, how did San Diego in this report, the San Diego region here, how did we compare to other counties, let's say LA County, Orange County, things like that? We
ranked at fourth place, and I would add that since 2013, 2014, essentially there was a 6.5% increase in the total number of incidents.
So meaning 4 out of the 10 counties you looked at, we ranked with the 4th most complaints.
Yes.
I see. And Oscar, what do you think is the best way to reduce this? That's a high number here, to reduce bias against Muslims here in San Diego.
Well, part of our goal is also work with the Hate Crimes Coalition is to create public awareness so that victims will be more likely to report not only hate crimes, but also incidents which ultimately may lead across the line from a hate incident to a hate crime. An incident may be one where they're disrespecting someone because of their race, nationality, using profanity, derogatory statements, and we want the police to investigate those as well, so that we know who may possibly likely suspects may be if they cross the line to commit an actual hate crime.
for it actually progressing. And Hanif, there were several recommendations in this report on how to cope with this situation. So can you tell us some of the top ones that you think would be best to implement here in San Diego?
Absolutely. First and foremost, for us to be actually educated about our rights and liberties. And number two, to make sure that we report. A lot of cases go unreported. So for every case that we have, there are many more cases that are not reported. So number one, to know that there are federal, state, as well as in some cases city laws that would protect them, whether they're at employment, school, or any other location, or it has to do with accommodation.
All right. Well, I want to let folks know they can read the entire CARE report, which is actually quite interesting, on our website at kpbs.org. Hanif and Oscar, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
State senators in South Carolina voted today to remove the Confederate flag from State House grounds. To make the decision final, the proposal needs several more approvals, including from the State House and Governor Nikki Haley, who is in favor of signing the bill. Flag supporters say the symbol was misused by that young white man charged recently with killing 9 people at an historic black church in Charleston. The federal government says that supermarkets lose about $15 billion each year because of wasted produce, and that is mostly fruits or vegetables that rot before they can be sold. Food waste often goes into landfills, but EarthFix reporter Katie Campbell shows us some new technology to change that.
Walk into just about any supermarket and you'll see a beautiful bounty of fresh food. But behind the eye-catching displays is a far less appetizing truth. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, every year more than 21 million tons of food sold in retail stores never makes it to consumers. 1 in 7 truckloads of perishables delivered to grocery stores will be thrown out. Most of the losses happen in the produce aisle.
We have over 350 fruits and vegetables. There's a lot of food that will go past sell date or be unsellable for one reason or another.
To meet consumer demands, grocers tend to stock only the most attractive produce. Anything less than perfect gets pitched.
Most grocery stores have no choice but to put their food scraps in with the trash.
But at PCC Natural Market in Issaquah, Washington, food scraps don't go in the trash. And they don't get composted either. They're put in a machine called a harvester.
Our food scraps go immediately into the harvester where they're processed. There is no odor.
Inside, everything is blended into a liquid and stored in a sealed tank. The harvester is the brainchild of a team of former Microsoft executives. They wondered if they could use data to attack the problem of commercial food waste. Larry Lesueur is the CEO.
As we looked at this food waste issue and we started asking the questions of why it was occurring, no one had the answers. There was no data, there was no metrics on it. So we looked at this and said, if we could capture the metrics, if we could understand the data behind it, we could alter behavior.
Every pile of food that goes into a harvester is weighed and coded by what department it came from. That real-time data is sent to grocers so that they can see exactly where they're losing food. But how do they get rid of that silo of blended food scraps?
We put all this energy and effort into growing this food source, and then we're trying to figure out how do we make it all go away conveniently. We're not benefiting from all this hard effort that we got from our society in growing the food in the first place.
If you view the food scraps as a waste, you've missed the point. Food scraps are a resource.
Victor Tyrone is Weiserg's chief science officer.
And the aroma.
He wondered if that slurry of food waste could be turned into an organic fertilizer.
The potential is massive. You're talking about the need for millions of gallons of organic fertilizer. We might expect a harvester to produce maybe 10,000 gallons of fertilizer over a period of time, but the need is for millions of gallons of fertilizer.
They started analyzing the liquid in the lab and figured out that they could indeed turn what was once meant to be food for people into food for plants. But would this organic fertilizer be effective in large-scale crop production? Ted Andrews is one of the owners of Herb Co. It's an organic culinary herb farm that started in Duvall, Washington, and now has farms in 8 states.
We put fresh herbs in little packages and sell them through grocery stores.
Organic farming can be more challenging, but Andrews says it's worth it.
As a steward of the land, I prefer to have organic inputs rather than conventional inputs that could run off into the Snoqualmie River, which is right over there.
When a Weisserg representative told Andrews about a fertilizer made from food scraps, it sounded too good to be true.
I have a lot of people trying to sell me products of all kinds and always have a healthy skepticism, but I dared him to prove it to me.
They set aside a field of basil as a test plot and started using Weisserg fertilizer in their drip irrigation system. A few months later, the difference was measurable. The Weisserg basil had 30% more biomass. The leaves were bigger, and the color was deeper than basil in other fields.
It turns out it actually is quite a bit more effective than what we're used to.
Andrews says he hopes to use the Weisserg fertilizer on more of his fields next year. Then he'll have even more herbs to package up and send to supermarkets. And farmers aren't the only ones who can buy this food waste fertilizer. It's also being sold on supermarket shelves, including the PCC where the food scraps came from in the first place.
Not only are we making a difference with the food waste and preventing it from happening, we're doing it in a sustainable way, and we're doing it in an environmentally friendly way that makes economic sense for the business.
For the Weisserg team, this idea of closing the food waste circle could be a model for supermarkets across the country.
That was Katie Campbell of EarthFix, an environmental reporting project made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Golden moment for Team USA. Carly Lloyd's 3 first-half goals helped the women's team bring home the World Cup this weekend. The 5-2 victory over Japan gave the Americans a record 3rd Women's World Cup title. U.S. fans, including Vice President Joe Biden, streamed across the border for the match. They filled Vancouver's BC Place with more than 53,000 fans. Now, this is the look at the watch party at Petco Park on Sunday. The San Diego chapter of the American Outlaws shared this video by Brenda Moffat. According to Nielsen, more than 26 million viewers watched the match. A lot of those viewers were here in San Diego. The city's soccer watching audience ranked 3rd among local television markets. A landmark deal may help California fight wildfires and survive its ongoing drought. California made a pact with Victoria, Australia today. The state of Victoria has also been hit hard by massive wildland fires and a 12-year drought. Officials there agreed to share their knowledge. They say getting the communities involved in emergency preparedness has helped save lives.
The number one principle has to be primacy of life. We can't always do that as emergency service workers. Sometimes it's up to the community to make some decisions about themselves. So that shared responsibility with community is really important.
Emergency officials from Australia plan on learning more about earthquakes from their counterparts here in California. It's been 4 years since the Pentagon lifted its controversial Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. It prohibited gay people from openly serving in the military. But as KPBS reporter Kenny Goldberg explains, that policy is still a reality for transgender service members.
At the Navy's first LGBT Pride event on the West Coast at North Island, my guest, retired Army Colonel Sherry Swokowski, delivered the keynote address. She's considered the highest-ranking transgender military veteran. But during her 34 years in the military, she kept her gender identity to herself. Sherry, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
What was it like to serve in the Army and keep such a fundamental part of your identity a secret?
It was very difficult. Being an infantry officer or infantry person is hard enough the way it is. But I lived the Army values, and part of that was putting the organization ahead of personal needs and interests. So I deeply suppressed it in order to be the best person I could, the best leader I could to take care of my soldiers.
And what was that like as you proceeded through the military, keeping that attitude and maintaining that attitude?
It was difficult, and although I suppressed it for so 2 or 3 decades, it was interrupted by very brief and infrequent interludes of being authentic, where I would actually go out, purchase clothing, dress to be my authentic self, and of course then the guilt would set in and everything would be purged until the next time. And I knew there would be a next time.
That must have taken just a tremendous amount of self-control.
It did, and I think I was able to work through it because of my military training and leadership capabilities.
Now, you decided to make your transition after you were retired, and you became a military contractor, and what happened at that point?
Well, I was a contractor at the Army's Force Management School at Fort Belvoir, lead course instructor, and decided to transition. Informed the folks at the schoolhouse that I was going to transition when I came back. And when I came back, met with the director, Sherry, for the first time. First sentence out of his mouth was, "Thanks for coming back to help us with this course." And the next sentence was, "We've already hired your replacement."
My goodness. What is the current military policy regarding gay and transgendered people?
Well, as you know, the gay and lesbian community can serve openly now since the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell in December of 2010. But unfortunately, that doesn't pertain to the transgender troops. So it's estimated there's 15,000 plus across the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, and Air Force in both the active and reserve components that are still out there and still identify as transgender. But if they came out, they face discharge and the loss of their job.
What does someone's gender identity have to do with their ability to serve in the armed forces?
It really has very little. I often look back at my own experience and wonder how much better a person, how much better an NCO and an officer I could have been had I been allowed to transition while on active duty. Because there's nothing like being authentic. It's a requirement. You don't really work up to your full potential if you're not authentic, because you always have that other part of you that's out there.
What do you think would be the result of a change in military policy regarding transgendered folks?
I don't think there would be much change. I think it would be very similar to when gays and lesbians and bisexuals can serve openly. Took a little bit of education to trickle down through the ranks, but it was done well. And I think the same thing can be accomplished for the transgender troops that are out there.
What would it take to change the current policy?
What it's going to take is for the Secretary of Defense to get everybody on board and do this. The Army and the Air Force have already made inroads. They're trying to take care of their transgender soldiers and airmen in the field, but the Navy and Marine Corps have yet to do that. So it's similar to what happened during the process that Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed.
And finally, how big an ordeal would it be, do you think, to make that change that you're looking for?
I don't think it's an overburdening amount that would change. It's going to take some education and some information going out to everybody to understand that being transgender is a medical issue deserving of treatment.
Okay, retired Army Colonel Sherry Swokowski, thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.
I'm Judy Woodruff on the next News Hour. A report from the concert event of the summer, the Grateful Dead's farewell shows from Chicago's Soldier Field. That's Monday on the PBS News Hour.
Figuring it out. Oh, there goes my number.
The rescue team at SeaWorld helped 5 Guadalupe fur seals dive back into the ocean today. They spent some time at the marine park for rehabilitation. Scientists did add satellite trackers to 2 of the seals. The goal is to monitor them because Guadalupe fur seals are a threatened species. Turnout at the beaches fell short of expectations for the July 4th holiday weekend. Experts say more than 500,000 people flocked to the coastline, but cloudy skies turned off others. Lifeguards performed 100 water rescues during the weekend. That's down from more than 400 last year. Today was an important day for San Diego's junior lifeguards. It's the end of a training cycle and time to take a leap of faith off the Ocean Beach Pier. Junior lifeguards walked nervously down the Ocean Beach Pier. They were taking part in a San Diego ritual as part of their training with the region's professional lifeguards. Instructor Tom Valente considers it a rite of passage.
I started junior lifeguards when I was 10 years old, and that was the first time I jumped the pier. down where the seas jump, and it was definitely scary, but I do it every year and I want to do it again. I look forward to the day.
11-year-old Catalina Cruz has already made the jump twice before. She says it's scary, but that's part of the magic.
Because you got to get over your fears to do it. If you do this, you can do many things.
1, 2, 3, step.
Cruz was calm and collected, but her mom Kelly seemed a bit on edge.
I think it's harder to watch than to actually do it as a parent, but just because you're nervous for your child and you don't want them not to do it, but when they do it, it makes you nervous too. But I'm just happy she did it. It's over with, and hopefully I got some good pictures.
And when you're standing on the very top of that rail, it looks like it's a lot further.
Corey McClellan helps run the junior lifeguard event each summer. He's done the jump a number of times himself.
But I think the whole program instills that self-confidence in them, that they understand that they can conquer their fears, if that's the case, or just the learning and the knowledge that comes with the other types of aquatic safety.
Incidentally, parents could pay $75 to jump with their children, and quite a few do. The event raised $10,000 for the foundation last year. And we do have another point of view for the OB plunge. Roman Gray took the jump with a GoPro camera, and to me, he still looks just as intimidating from that angle. You can find tonight's stories. They're on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks very much for joining us. We will be back here tomorrow night. Have a great evening.